Hey small groups, glad that you guys are joining us again. This is week 3 of our series, Waitlisted, as we're continuing our conversation of what it is like to be in a season of waiting and what we can expect to see from God in those seasons. With me today, I actually am going to have you help me. We're going to roast a little bit of coffee. This is a present I actually got for myself for Christmas. I don't know if you ever do that, but sometimes you get gifts for yourself. I actually got myself a coffee roaster. It's something that I wanted for a really long time. And it's actually something I saw a friend of mine make coffee in St. Louis before. It was really fun to watch him go through that process. And when I saw one that was at a decent price near me pop up, I had to go get it. And I had to then start watching different videos online and learn about the process of roasting coffee. So first, you actually have, if you're not familiar, these are green coffee beans, and you actually have to have just the right weight of coffee that you put in the machine that I have. It is actually just about a half a pound that we put in there. And then it goes in there for different lengths of time and for different heat. And what's I think really interesting about this is that I think it kind of relates to our lives a little bit, if I think about it, is that this coffee right now is no good. This would actually probably be awful and taste like grass, and it would taste like leaves. It would not be a good cup of coffee if I ground all these coffee beans up and made even a fancy brew of some sort. It wouldn't taste like much of anything. It wouldn't resemble coffee at all. It actually has to go through the roasting process for it to taste like a good cup of coffee. But to go through the roasting process, you actually have to have everything else dialed in. You actually have to, put it in this container, and in a moment, I'll show you guys. We'll go outside and we'll put it in the machine and put it into the heat. And it has to go in there for a certain heat, for a certain length of time. And then there is this moment where the coffee will actually let you know that it is ready. But it has to be under this intense heat for a period of time for it to develop properly and for it to have all the right flavors. And then you can't let it go in too long, because obviously you don't want to drink it when it's green, but you also don't want to drink it when it's black, because it's just going to taste like tar and it's going to be no good either. Okay, I don't know if I'm just speaking to the people that like coffee out there like I do, but this definitely relates to our life. If you feel like you're in a season of waiting, I imagine you've been in there and you're wondering, what is God doing? And maybe you're asking yourself the question, does he hear me? Does he hear my cries? Does God hear me when I'm asking him to come help me with a situation? If I'm struggling in relationships, I'm struggling in school, I'm trapped in a spiral of anxiety and I can't pull myself out. I'm pulled into a pit of depression, and I really just can't pull myself up by my own bootstraps and start to think more positively. And I'm calling out to God and wondering, how is he going to help me? Maybe you're wondering, what is your next step next year if you're a senior and you still don't know what school or what career path you want to go on. And you're waiting for some sort of sign from God. When is he going to show up? When is he going to do what only he can do and set you on the right path? There are characters in the Bible, and we've talked about some already in the previous weeks, but there's one that we are all familiar with, and this is David. David actually was anointed as a king when he was like a preteen. And then he went through this crazy series of events that continued in his life, but didn't set him on the throne immediately. He's anointed king. Then he goes and he kills a giant. Then he starts to play music in the court for Saul. But Saul, who was the king at the time, was jealous of David. So jealous that sometimes Paul would get so enraged that one time he actually threw a spear at David while he was playing music and tried to kill him. And then David went on the run, running from his life, from Saul and from people that Saul told to go kill David. And he went from city to city, and he literally had to hide in a cave at one point. This psalm, actually Psalm 57, actually comes from David when he was hiding in a cave from Saul, hiding for his life. This is David, who was anointed to be king years ago, is still not king, and the existing king is trying to kill him. And David's response is actually to call out to God. I think it's the right response that we all should have. So in Psalm 57, starting in verse 1, it says, "Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge. Till the storms of destruction pass by, I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. He will send from the heavens and save me. He will put to shame him who tramples on me. He will set out his steadfast love and his faithfulness. My soul is in the midst of lions. I lie down amid fiery beasts, the children of men whose teeth are spears and arrows, like the spear that was actually thrown by Saul to try to kill David, whose tongues are sharp as swords. Be exalted, God, above heaven. Let your glory be over the earth. He's looking to God. David is looking to God for answers. He's not looking to any other thing, any other situation, any other person, but he's waiting on God. And he's trusting that God in heaven hears his prayers from a cave. So that might be you right now. And I find it kind of funny is that we actually have to be inclined to be heard by God and trust that we have a God who does hear all of our prayers, hears all of our cries out to him. And then at the same time, as we ask God to listen to us and that we trust that he listens to us, that we also need to be ready to listen to him. So let's actually go ahead. We're going to head outside. We're going to start roasting this coffee, and then we're going to listen too. All right, guys, so we had our coffee beans. We already weighed them out. We brought them out here, and we're going to start them. And you can see the drum is starting to spin. The heating element in the back is on, and it's beginning to count down. This is the process, like I mentioned earlier, is the only way that you can go from just a green coffee bean to something that tastes really good. Something that I really enjoy and enjoy probably maybe a little bit too much on a daily basis. But the reality is the same for all of us. The same was true for David. That David, for him to become the king, who is the guy that pursued God more than anybody else recorded in the Bible, he had to go through an extreme heat. He had to go through a lot of pressure. He had to go through a season where we already talked about. Saul was literally trying to kill him. But the thing that kept David strong throughout all of that is that he trusted that he had a God who listened through all of that. And the fact is, for this to be successful, you have to listen too. What I haven't mentioned yet is actually the way to roast coffee well, especially when you're just learning. What I found out is you have to listen. I can't go anywhere. I have to wait for this machine to do its work. It has to heat, but it doesn't just run on its own. There has to be someone near it at all times, not only just for safety, but because you're waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for the coffee bean to literally crack, and it makes a little popping sound. It actually is very similar to popcorn. And once those coffee beans start cracking, they all begin to crack. First it starts slow, and then it goes really fast like popcorn. And then you know you actually need to turn the machine off, you need to open it, you need to cool everything off as quickly as possible, especially if you like coffee like I do with a lighter and medium roast. Otherwise it's going to get too burnt, it's going to get too cooked. So we have to listen for those beans to know when they're ready to be taken out of the heat and out of the pressure. Maybe that's where you're at right now. Maybe you think that you're in a season and you're calling out and you're ready to crack, you're ready to pop, you're ready to break, you're ready to burst. And you're wondering, God, why won't you take me out of this pressure? Why won't you take me out of this heat? Why won't you take me out of this environment that I need to be out of, God? I've waited long enough. I've been calling on you. Are you listening? But can you trust and can you believe? Just like I'm here waiting on these coffee beans and I know the right moment. I know because I'm listening for when the right moment is right for me to pull these out that it's gonna be the best for everything. Is God doing the same in your life? Does he hear you all along, but he knows that the situation is not right quite yet for you to either have the stressors pulled out of your life or have something fixed or have all the answers? Maybe you need to wait a little bit longer, but you can know this much, that God is there and he is listening. Let me go ahead and share one more verse with you guys. It comes again out of the Psalms and we hear again from David. This time it's out of Psalm 116. And this we're going to start in verse 1. And again we hear the fact that David is calling out to his God. That's what he's doing. He's writing songs, he's singing, he is calling and praying to his God. Verse 1, Psalm 116. I love the Lord because he has heard my voice. and my pleas for mercy, because he has inclined his ear to me. Therefore I will call on him as long as I live. The snares of death encompass me. The pangs of Sheol lay hold of me. I suffer distress and anguish. Then I call on the name of the Lord. O Lord, I pray, deliver my soul. Gracious is the Lord, and righteous is our God, is merciful. The Lord preserves the simple. When I was brought low, he saved me. It goes on from there. But there we see clearly that David knows and has confidence in a God who does rescue, a God who comes to him, not only when things are going well and when he's being anointed king and later when he becomes king, but God is with him in the cave. God is with him when his life is being threatened. And David recognized that his only refuge, his only place to go, the only person who understands every bit of David's life and every bit of his struggle is God. And that's the one that he turns to. Is that where you're at right now? I know that you guys are all walking through different seasons and different difficulties right now. But what have you been turning to? To be perfectly honest, sometimes we can just turn to the almighty Google and try to find answers there, or start digging down on Instagram or YouTube and try to search for somebody, some influencer out there that knows something that you don't, that then you can listen to their advice and that you can change your life yourself. The reality is that there's really no hope to be found in earthly wisdom. The fact of the matter is that you don't need to learn from someone else, but you need to lean on a God who's listening to you and trust the fact that no matter what you're going through, he understands it, he hears you, and he will pull you out of the situation when it is right for you and when you are ready to be pulled out of it, when things are ready to be better. And just trust the fact that God's doing that in your life. My challenge to you as you go into your small groups in a little bit, and after we hear this, or not our popcorn, but rather we hear our coffee crack, that you guys would talk about where you're at. Do you feel like you're ready to crack? Do you feel like you're ready to pop? Do you feel like you're ready to break like these coffee beans are about to? And if so, do you trust the fact that you have a God who's listening to you? Or maybe you're, like I mentioned earlier, maybe you really don't believe that God's listening. And that's okay if you feel that way, to be able to express that to your small group and your small group leader. It's a safe place, it's a safe environment, and hopefully they can encourage you and remind you that even if you feel that way and your emotions are in such a place that you feel like you can't trust in God, that they'd be able to encourage you and point you back to the fact that you have a God who loved you enough to send Jesus for you, to die for you, that he's also with you in the situation that you're walking through right now. So we're going to go ahead and pause for a second, and then we'll come back when this is about to pop. All right. Maybe you guys can hear that, maybe not. But it is now beginning to crack. It's now beginning to pop. And that means that we're at the point where our coffee is almost done. And my prayer for you right now in your group and for you is that you recognize that this time in your life is coming. Whatever it is that you're waiting on, whatever it is that you're hoping for, the day is coming. And it might be today, it might be next week, or it might be in a couple years. Whatever it is that you're hoping for, there is hope. There is an end, and there is a God who is sitting there, and he's waiting, and he is listening. And the moment will come where you're no longer in whatever stressful situation you're in, no longer stuck in the middle and in between, but you'll be taken out of that stressful spot and set somewhere else. But this much is true. As long as we're on this side of eternity, there will be these moments, there will be these pressure cooker moments where God continually refines us and tries to use these situations to make us look more like him and to be used more by him. And then we get to be taken out of the heat and used by him. Have a great time in your guys' small group, and then God's blessing on your discussion.